Welcome back, guys. This is our second part video on our coverage of the Danelo Souza Cavalcante escape story. In our first video, we looked at the genesis of the man by name Danilo Cavalcante and how he escaped from Brazil, the reason for which he even escaped from Brazil, how he got to Puerto Rico to get a fake ID, and how he illegally entered the United States of America, and fast forwarded to the crimes he committed and the reason for which he was convicted and sentenced to life without parole, and then subsequently ended up at the Chester County Prison awaiting processing to begin his life sentence, and then took it up to the point where he eventually escaped. And in that video, I promised you we're going to put out another video detailing how he escaped and what has transpired from day 1 through to day 12 of his escape and manhunt. If you haven't watched our first video yet, I will advise you watch that video. It will give you a better perspective as you come to watch this second video and you begin to see the pieces come together as to who this guy is, how he has become what he is, and how come the police and security agencies seem to be having a problem apprehending this guy. It begs the question, is he even going to be apprehended at all? I will advise you watch the first video and then you come watch this one and you begin to see everything lining up to give you more knowledge and the true picture about the man by name Danilo Souza Cavalcante. So, Cavalcante is now sent to the Chester County Prison, awaiting processing to begin his sentence or to begin serving his sentence of life imprisonment without parole with regards to his murder of his ex-girlfriend by name Deborah Caneo. Now, at a point in time, whilst awaiting processing, Danilo Cavalcante managed to somehow scale the wall of the prison at the exercise area, and he did it in a Spider-Man like fashion. I watched the video and I kept asking myself, how can somebody do this? And for this seemingly short and tiny, lanky guy, I think his core strength is that solid and he's very agile because it takes all that for somebody to successfully pull what he did. And he did it with so much ease. I don't know if he rehearsed or practiced or trained for this at a secret location or somewhere behind the scenes before getting good at it and then trying it for the escape, or it's something he just pulled out of the bag and did just a one time and he was successful at it. It's also good to mention that this Chester County prison has a history because it turns out that just 1 month prior to Danilo Cavalcante's escape from this prison, there was also a prison escape by another convict from the same prison of Chester County Prison. So that is something that they would have to look into. But bringing it down to Danilo Cavalcante's issue, this guy, just 34 years old, scaled up the wall in the exercise yard as though he was Spider-Man on the 31st of August 2023 and got to the ceiling, made his way through the barbed wires, was able to dodge or evade the guard in the tower such that this guard didn't see him. I find that very suspicious. And some way, somehow, the people who were also manning the CCTV feed did not detect this guy on top of the ceiling. Now, between the people at the security control room manning the CCTVs and watching the feed and the guard in the control tower looking out for attempted escapees, I think that something is fishy or there's a level of incompetence that has to be looked at. But what I gather in my investigations, Already, the guard who was at post in that tower, I hear, has been fired. Initially, he was asked to proceed on leave, but has subsequently been fired because how can you miss such a thing? That is why you are there. But sometimes there's a tendency for people to take certain occurrences or the possibilities of these occurrences for granted because he might have been at post, and from what I gather, he's been on this job for several years. So imagine being positioned or stationed in that tower for several years and without any incident. You begin to feel like it's for granted. You just have to be there because somebody should be there to serve as a lookout and also serve as a deterrent. But little did he know there will come a man by name Danilo Souza Cavalcante, and Cavalcante will pull this Spider-Man thing and some way, somehow, will take advantage of maybe this guard also having taken the job for granted. That is not to say that he did. I'm just looking at the possibilities. There's also a possibility it's an inside job, such that this guard might even be in on it. There's that possibility too, but I'm sure investigations will unravel that because if you watch the footage, there was another inmate close to the area where Cavalcante used to scale up the wall onto the ceiling. And the way this inmate was positioned, it's almost as though he was a lookout for Cavalcante. That cannot be readily established in the footage, but it looks like he's possibly looking out for him, or it could also be that coincidentally he just happened to be standing there and didn't even notice that Danilo Cavalcante was in that corner trying to pull off his Spider-Man like escape. So there's a whole lot of mystery around this. But that was how the whole crazy started. And just like that, Danilo Cavalcanti was out and he was roaming in the Chester County area. Now, alarms were put out, news bulletins were put out, and the police and other security agencies got to work. Search perimeters were established and barricaded, and the initial idea, it seemed, was to box him in and close in on the grid and tighten it and trap him. So, initially, at the press conference that was held with regards to this incident, the police were very confident that they were going to get their man. But then, day one went by, day two went by, and suddenly there was a sighting that he had been seen in a park. He had managed to get a backpack, managed to get some clothing. So you would see that this guy is gradually making some progress. It's not clear where he's headed, but he broke out of prison with nothing. Now he has a backpack, seemingly occupied with some form of supplies, and he's gotten some clothing to put on as well. So it still wasn't much to go with. It was as though, yeah, we are still going to catch him because the perimeter seemed like it could be possibly almost 100% secure, such that they will close in and eventually get their man. But then I think most people didn't know. I'm sure the security officers would have known this, but most people didn't know that Danilo Cavalcanti is quite familiar with the Chester County area. It turns out that when he first came to the United States illegally, he was living in that part of town with his sister and some friends from Brazil. So I think that it's very likely he familiarized with the area. He knows the area such that if he's now on the run and it turns out that he has to resort to he being familiar with the area to survive and evade capture, I think he has enough information and familiarity with the terrain to lean on and put up a fighting chance of avoiding recapture. That is my opinion. Some people have the view that some people might be helping him. It also remains to be seen. But then the police were also hunting for him with helicopters, search parties, heat vision, and other things to the extent that his mom was even contacted and involved and engaged in this activity. And there was this audio being played of his mom advising Danelo Cavalcante to give up and surrender and allow himself to be captured. I think that this is probably his mom trying to show her motherly love for her son and encourage him to turn himself in, because for her, she would actually prefer him alive and captured than gunned down and dead. And I understand that, because which of the two best helps the mom? No parent wants to bury their kid, especially a mom who gave birth to her own son. But then that also didn't influence Danilo Cavalcante in any way, because he still didn't surrender and he kept on trying to evade capture. Now, this scenario had a very negative impact on the Chester County area, because suddenly everybody was on high alert. Because, mind you, this is not just any prisoner who has escaped. This is a prisoner who is actually wanted for a 2017 murder in Brazil and has also actually been sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for another murder in the United States. So to have this guy on the loose, please, everybody knew they had to advise themselves, because he seemed even more dangerous now because he had nothing to lose. So people were put on edge and everybody was on high alert. And I think it was a step in the right direction. Some schools were even closed, some businesses were even closed as well. So just like that, Danilo Cavalcanti had become possibly people's worst nightmare, especially in the Chester County area. Efforts by the police seemed to be yielding some fruits based on the assurances they were given, but then it also, over time, began to seem like it wasn't enough, because some way, somehow, Danilo Cavalcanti is still evading arrest. They saw some footprints. They camped out in certain places, specifically the Longwood Gardens, where they at a point used as a base of operations. And kudos to these establishments, because they were really, really supportive to the police. They were really supportive to the police and security agencies. Some shop owners also leaned in. You could see that communal vibe in the community, all aimed at helping the police and other security agencies to be able to be well resourced, refreshed, and nourished to be at work and work effectively and efficiently, all aimed at recapturing the convict by name Danilo Cavalcante. But then the lone person, the lone escapee, Cavalcante, also made it his goal to avoid the recapture. So the cat and mouse game was on, and it was more like a catch me if you can thing, where the police were sure they had him within the perimeter and there was no way he was going to escape it. As the days went by, other sightings of him came up. The police were still adamant that he was within their search perimeter. But until recently, just over 24 hours ago, another sighting came where Danilo Cavalcanti allegedly reached out to some roommates or some former roommates of his, two of them actually. It turns out they were not home and he left some messages on their Ring doorbell videos. Now, these roommates of his saw them and then reported to the police. And I think that it's a good thing they've done. I just hope they are kept safe, because this guy could decide to retaliate. Who knows? But to turn him in like that, I don't think he would take it lightly, especially if he had some form of trust that these guys were going to help him by virtue of their history. And it turns out now that they have turned that information into the police, which is now going to be a form of lead. But upon receipt of that information, the police noticed that certain transformations had taken place since they last saw Danelo Cavalcante, and certain things they thought was were no longer what they thought. What are these things? First, as at the last sighting of Danilo Cavalcanti, he had not shaved. So that was the picture with which people were looking out for him. But then, with this ring doorbell video that he left at the premises of his former roommates, it became evident that he has now shaved. So he had a new look. And then it also became evident that Danilo Cavalcanti, contrary to the expectations of the police, had actually escaped the search perimeter. He had managed to sneak out of it. So the police were searching an area where he probably was no longer at. So this guy actually had a head start on the police by beating their search grade, to the extent that he even stole a 2020 Ford van and later abandoned it. But, some people were trying to blame the police for allowing him to escape the perimeter, but I don't think it's as simple as that. And the police detailed it out clearly. The area they were searching for him at has tunnels. So when these things are in play, it doesn't result in a search perimeter being 100% foolproof, such that the perimeter is so tight nothing can escape. No, there is always going to be that possibility of a margin of error, especially when you are dealing with somebody like Danilo Cavalcanti, who has prior knowledge of the terrain, because he was able to even apparently survive by breaking into homes that people were not around in. Some of these homes belonged to people who had second homes elsewhere and were not at home. And Danilo Cavalcanti was able to seek out these homes and break in and use them as cover to manage avoiding recapture. So you could see that this is a guy who knew what he was doing. There's a method to his madness. He's a very determined escapee, determined not to get caught. And in that, I see desperation, in the sense that I wouldn't be surprised if this guy's mindset is that he will go down swinging than get recaptured and sent back to prison. Remember, he's just 34 years old and he's been sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. I think this could possibly be this guy's last hurrah. And I pray that if push comes to shove and he gets cornered by the police, it wouldn't result in a hostage situation, because the way I see Danilo Cavalcanti, I think that he's capable of doing anything, as he is proving with his two murders, and is now even in a more dangerous position to do anything to avoid recapture. I'm hoping that he'll be captured without incident and without any danger or injury to any citizen. But the search continues. We've already gone past the 12th day, and Danilo Cavalcanti is still not captured. Now, the daughter of his ex-girlfriend, whom he fatally stabbed severally, actually granted an interview talking about the fact that she's so afraid that Danilo Cavalcanti might decide to come after her. And it wouldn't be out of place, actually. If you know people like him, you would appreciate the fact that some of them just don't forgive if you snitch on them. Some of them just don't forgive if you testify on them. And at this point, I'm expecting that there should be security provided, or let me say, adequate security provided to everybody who had a role to play in the arrest, conviction, and sentencing of Danilo Cavalcanti, because from this point, anything is possible. And he has proven, especially from the day of his escape, the modus operandi with which he escaped and the means with which he has avoided recapture, that he is very resourceful. The police talk about the seeming network of tunnels in the Chester County area and the fact that he could have used any of them as an escape route. And these tunnels make it impossible to have a search grade that is 100% foolproof. So it means that Danilo Souza Cavalcanti is smart. In as much as it's not a cool thing to admit, in his case, the guy might actually be smart and intelligent, and he has a method to his madness. And I think that proactivity is the way to go. I'm happy that residents are complying with instructions and advice from the police and other security agencies with regards to ensuring their safety. But then there are also reports of some self styled vigilantes trying to get on board the manhunt, but inadvertently rather becoming a hindrance to the progress of work being done by the police and other security agencies. I think that all these begin to work into the advantage of Danilo Cavalcanti, and it will be good these vigilantes just stay out of it and let the police do their work. Then, in another development regarding this, his sister, you remember her? You can watch our first video. I spoke about her. She has now been arrested by US immigration. There are rumors that she might be deported. There are rumors that she was picked up because of the suspicion that she might have been helping him after his escape. And I said in my first video, and I'll say again, that I don't think that will be far-fetched because apparently there's already a record that she helped him after he took the life of his ex-girlfriend. So it means that she has helped him before after he had committed a crime and she knew he was wanted. So nothing stops her from repeating that again. And in my first video, I talked about the fact that even when he escaped arrest in Brazil for that 2017 murder and came to the US illegally, his sister is reported to have helped him settle. So I think that blood is thicker bond of thing is working here. So there's still that possibility she might have helped him. And there are also rumors that his sister might actually be deported. So a whole lot of things are going on the chessboard with regards to the search for the escaped murderer, Danilo Souza Cavalcanti, and the aim and relentless effort of the security agencies to recapture him. Now, this is also going against the relentless effort of Danilo Cavalcanti to stay uncaptured, hidden, and still free. Who is going to win this? The sad thing is that caught in the middle of this is the society of the Chester County and its surrounding environs, where people are now on edge because you don't know how things are going to go as far as Danilo Cavalcanti is on the run and at large, because you could be the next person to encounter him. And in his current state, his back is against the wall and he has nothing to lose. That is a dangerous recipe to be given to a man like Danilo Cavalcanti. And I'm hoping that the authorities will be able to capture him within this coming week, because the longer he stays at large, the longer the chase will be and the more dangerous he will become. For me, I wouldn't be surprised he's actually trying to flee the United States of America, just as he fled Brazil when he was wanted for that 2017 murder. I wouldn't be surprised because at this point, I don't know what he will still be hanging around in the US for, because there's already a life sentence without parole on his head. And once he's caught, I'm sure there will be additional charges added. So, in his criminal mind, I foresee he might be thinking, possibly, that it does him more good to leave the United States of America than to remain in there and try to hippie hop from one state or one county to the other. What do you think about this entire case? Share your comments in the comment section. Stay safe if you are in this county or the surrounding counties watching this video. Don't take anything for granted. Don't think that it's too far from you. Please follow all the security protocols that have been shared, because you never know with somebody like this. Anything can happen. Keep an eye out and stay safe out there. Subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications. I'll catch you next time.